I'd say it was a huge voter backlash against the Democrats in power in an economy that just stinks for most Americans.
Simple as that.
I think it's as simple as that.
And John Fortier, the economy has been bad for a while. There's not bipartisan punishment being handed out, though, is there?
No, it's true. The president in power takes the brunt of midterm elections. People in polls don't say that the president is at fault for the economy, but it's been 2 years, and they say, what's happening? Why haven't we fixed things? So I think the president is being held accountable. I also think that there is this additional factor of worries about taxes, debt, deficits. That's not just the Tea Parties, but some moderate voters who started to abandon Obama early. They may not know the answer to what to do about the economy, but they're worried about those numbers. They know that they have to balance their checkbooks. They say, boy, that's a lot of rain they can get the government.
Danny Vargas, you guys had a good night Tuesday.
We had a good night on Tuesday. And I think at the end of the day, I think it's a combination of things. I think there's a level of frustration with what the Obama administration has done in terms of its agenda, working with the Democratic leaders in Congress, expanding the control and the influence of the federal government on people's individual daily lives through the health care reform package, the level of debt and deficit that we're maintaining, $13 trillion worth of debt that we're handing over to our children and grandchildren, the fact that there were promises made and never kept in terms of an $800 billion stimulus package that was promised to keep unemployment under 8%. We've been at over 9.5% unemployment for the last 14 consecutive months. I think the American public just got tired of it, and they wanted to try something different.
The Latino vote still went basically 2-1 to Democrats, but Marco Rubio in Florida, Brian Sandoval in Nevada, Susana Martinez in New Mexico, some significant Latino Republican wins.
Significant historic gains. Jamie Herrera in Washington State, and a number of others, David Rivera in Florida, a number of other Hispanic Republican elected officials that came up in this race that stood up, and they were voted into office by a plurality of voters. So across the board, every demographic segment voted for them, and they ran as common sense conservatives by and large. Limited government, smarter, more efficient and effective government, and that's what brought them into office.
Right. Unlike in a lot of House seats, you didn't need a Latino supermajority to win. They were statewide candidates who got statewide votes.
Absolutely. And that's a trend.
And Rudy Lopez, you guys did, well, terrible.
Well, it depends on what you mean by you guys. The Latino community actually did really good. And I think once again, showed the power of the Latino vote, as it did in 2004, 2006, and very strongly again in 2008. We set the bar again higher for ourselves, in spite of predictions that we wouldn't. It would have been even a worse night for the Democrats had it not been for the Latino firewall in the West. Colorado with Barbara Boxer, certainly Harry Reid has to be brushing up on his Spanish and finding different ways to say thank you and gracias to the Latino community. And certainly we've got Colorado, Mr. Bennett, who just having his race called last night in his favor has a lot to thank the Latino community for.
So, if you looked at the forecasts earlier in the season, everybody was saying the usual take on the Latino vote. Not midterm voters. When you do get them to register in a midterm cycle, they don't come out and vote. But they defied those expectations in a couple of specific races.
And by and large, I think it was just a statement to, once again, Latinos' willingness to engage in a way that really demonstrates the power of this constituency. And I think the other thing is that in spite of efforts to dissuade their vote, I mean, particularly when you look at Nevada, where there was a campaign by Latinos in Reform to keep them home by trying to air an ad in Spanish saying don't vote. In spite of those efforts, Latinos still came out and in record numbers. And in Reid's case, there's a couple different polls out there, but the Latino Decisions poll had them overwhelmingly supporting Reid by a staggering margin. Almost 90% of Latinos voted Reid instead of Engel.
Steven Thomma, does this Republican victory come with some asterisks attached to it? Like, taking over in a bad time is not exactly a present wrapped up in a bow. It presents some complications of its own.
It would if they were going to be held accountable. And there are so many Republicans this morning happy they did not win the Senate. because they don't even control the whole Congress, let alone the whole government. So if we still have 9.5% unemployment a year and a half now, they'll point at the president. They'll point at the Democratic Senate. So they're in a perfect political position, they believe, that they can stop President Obama from enacting certain things, but they think they won't be held accountable, because usually people vote about the president, hold the president accountable for these things. The other big asterisk, though, is the Republican Party comes out of this with some pretty potent divisions still there. I think the Tea Party challenge to the Republican establishment is not at all resolved. The Tea Party didn't do very well in the Senate races. I think they have a net loss of 1 seat. They would have won the Delaware seat had they nominated the other fellow, Mike Castle, instead of the Tea Party candidate, who went on to a crushing defeat. And they didn't win Colorado. They didn't win Nevada. They're not going to put a Tea Party person in Alaska in all likelihood. And the 2 states where Tea Party candidates won, Florida and Kentucky, were already Republican seats.
And, Marco Rubio might have won if we had never even heard the words Tea Party uttered out loud. I mean, he was already a known statewide factor, a popular politician, where it was just sort of an added, like a cherry on top of the sundae, to have the Tea Party endorsement. Do you go with that analysis, John, that the Republicans can plausibly come out of this Congress saying, "Hey, look, whatever's going on, it's not our fault, and if things are good, it's our credit."
Well, I think there's some truth to it. I mean, certainly we have the case of post-1994 when Republicans came in, and then ultimately Bill Clinton was able to turn the tables on them over the government shutdown, and Republicans overreached. And interestingly, people like John Boehner, the next speaker, were there at the time and are now looking to temper some enthusiasm among some of his very, very exuberant Tea Party supporters. Hey, maybe we don't want to have a big fight over shut down the government with President Obama. But mostly the president is the major figure. As much as this election will be about Republicans for a few days, the big questions are going to be about President Obama. What message did you take from this election? How are you going to fix your administration, change direction? Republicans will have their own problems. They may seem extreme at times, but the president is by far the biggest figure in American politics. I think we're still reacting to him.